Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the last video in my series of Marvel Superheroes Commander deck techs. I've released a new Marvel Commander deck every Thursday through now, when the Hobbit set is about to drop, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you want to see the Marvel decks I cooked up, take a look at the playlist linked in the video's description. As you see, today our commander is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Lunella Lafayette is a young and brilliant student and inventor, whose excitable daydreamer nature made her an outcast among her peers. Devil Dinosaur is an alternate reality intelligent theropod who lost his family to a violent tribe of early hominids. So, they have a lot in common. After the events of Marvel's Secret Wars, Devil Dinosaur crossed into the main continuity and encountered Lunella just about the time she was discovering her nature as an inhuman hybrid. She and Devil Dinosaur shared some adventures as Lunella tried to get her hands on a piece of Kree technology that she thought would protect her from what she feared most, becoming a full Inhuman if she were exposed to Terrigen Mist. I guess that's a threat in the current Marvel universe. These adventures forged them into a pretty cute crime-fighting team, and the bond they now share answered their lives of separation and isolation with one of interdependence and trust. And I'm excited to show you what I put together for these two. But before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a great card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is a 2/2 legendary human dinosaur hero, a human, a dinosaur, and they're both heroes, for 1, a green, and a blue. It has, whenever we draw our second card each turn, until end of turn, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur's base power and toughness becomes 6/6, and they gain trample. And whenever an artifact we control enters, we draw a card, and this ability triggers only once each turn. So it's pretty obvious where we're taking this, right? Simic Artifact Fall second card Dreadmaw Trinket Go Wide, obviously, that classic archetype? I kid. But our commander's second ability is no joke. It's pretty exciting to see a card advantage engine in the command zone, even if it's only once each turn, and especially so when it's based on artifacts hitting the battlefield. Even better is how it combines with their first ability, transforming them into one of the fiercest monsters ever to become a magic meme, the Colossal Dreadmaw. As funny as it is to see, this card still kills people, so having a commander who's a Dreadmaw half the time is pretty sweet. Our deck is built around triggering Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur's second ability as often as possible so that we can trigger their first ability too. We have a deck full of artifacts, from mana rocks to equipment to utility pieces, but we also have a bunch of ways to make artifact tokens. We're talking Thopters and drones and robots, of course, but also non-creature artifact tokens, food, clues, treasure, and so forth. Some people call these non-creature tokens tchotchkes or trinkets, but whatever we call them, they trigger our commander's artifact fall ability just fine, meaning that the first one we get on each of our turns also draws us a card. Best of all, we have effects that bring those tokens in on our opponent's turns as well. Abilities on our permanents, instants that make trinkets, and of course, artifacts that just have flash. Moon Girl and Devil Dino only draw us a card the first time an artifact enters for us on each turn, so one of our favorite trinket types is clues. We investigate to trigger our commander on an opponent's turn, then crack the clue to draw again and turn our commander into a dangerous dinosaur for blocking. There's a lot of synergy to this deck, and we can win in a few ways. From swinging in with our beefy commander to going wide with evasive attackers, both token and otherwise, or even turning all our artifacts into huge dinos in their own right, playing our deck feels like we're tinkering with a freshly fabricated invention. We cast a spell, which makes a token, which draws us a card, which embiggens our commander, and suddenly our board is nothing like what it was. We're turning knobs and twisting dials, flicking switches and watching readouts change, and the whole time our opponents are wondering what they've gotten themselves into. We have our heads so far in the clouds that it's practically in space, and when we rain down artifacts on our playmat, it's like asteroids hitting the ground. But the rumbling sound they hear is our huge dinosaur commander coming for the rest of our pod, that skyfall presaging not our extinction, but theirs. Soon enough, they're staring up as a massive threat looms, waiting for the end as our moon rocks plummet toward them. You'll enjoy this deck if you like the idea of an artifact synergy strategy with a lot of card advantage that still becomes a combat threat. Or if you're into the idea that it doesn't make a difference who refuses to accept you, it only matters who refuses not to. So, This Moxfield list we're going over today, as usual, is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which for me didn't make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done here and you want to go harder into it, or if you're interested in this as a starting point and you want to go in a little bit of a different direction on your own, that considering section is a great place to get inspiration when you build your own Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur deck. So let's begin. We have a deck full of artifacts, and we talked about our trinkets a little bit, so we're going to start with them. These are all cards that make non-creature artifact tokens, which we're just calling trinkets. Some people call them tchotchkes, some people just call them, well, non-creature artifact tokens, but yeah, all of them work well with our commander, and as many of them as possible are something we can cast or activate at instant speed so that we can trigger Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur on our opponent's turns. But not our first one. This is Many Partings. It's a single green mana for a sorcery that lets us search our library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, and then make a food token. So this is just Lay of the Land, a single green to find a basic land and essentially draw it by putting it in our hand, even though it doesn't count as a draw effect. And we get a food token, which will trigger our commander, so kind of, for a single green, we're getting 2 cards in hand, as long as this isn't the first, as long as this is the first artifact that's entered during a turn when we have Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur in play, because Many Partings will resolve, find us that land, put it in our hand, make the food, trigger our commander will give us another card draw, and that's pretty good. Again though, finding this card is not a draw effect, even though it's, colloquially drawing a basic. You get it. Next is Secrets of the Key, an instant for a single blue that has us investigate, which means we make a clue token. Clues are artifacts that if we pay to and sacrifice them, we draw a card, so we don't even have to tap them. And if Secrets of the Key was cast from a graveyard, we investigate twice instead, and it has flashback for 3 and a blue. So this is great. We can use this twice during the game, once from our hand, once from the graveyard, and we make a clue each time. For a single blue, making a clue on an opponent's turn is great because we don't just get our little trinket in play, triggering our commander, drawing a card, but then we can crack that clue right away, drawing a second card if we need to make our commander into a 6/6 for that turn. Which again, we only really use for purposes of defense, maybe blocking, maybe if someone tries to shock our commander, we'd like to pump it up. These are good options. But otherwise, we want to hang on to that clue because we can use it for other purposes, or at the very least, just crack it on a turn, on one of our turns, when maybe we don't have a way to get another artifact into play, so that we have then drawn our second card, and we've pumped up our commander into a Colossal Dreadmaw, so that we can attack with them. Yeah. Next is Deduce. This is 1 and a blue for an instant that has us draw a card and then investigate. Investigate is just the keyword ability that means make a clue. Some of these cards we might see don't necessarily say investigate, they might just say make a clue. They've started doing that as of, I believe, the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. But in either case, this is essentially pay 4 mana to draw 2 cards, but one of those is kind of locked up in our clue token. So this is draw a card and then draw another card from your commander. So that's a great way for us to draw 2 cards on an opponent's turn just by casting Deduce. Not by cracking the clue, but by just having it come in and thereby trigger Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Next is Lannis, Cryptozoologist. This is a really, really cool card, and I know that because I built a deck for her. If you want to see that Lannis deck, check out this video, or check out the link to it in this video's description. So Lannis is a Snake Elf Scout, 1/2 for a green and a blue, that says whenever another non-token creature you control enters, investigate. We've got plenty of non-token creatures in this deck, so this is a nice way for us to get a whole bunch of different clue tokens into play. And we can tap Lannis and sacrifice any number of clues, and one of our opponents will reveal the top that many cards of their library. We can put a non-land permanent with mana value that number or less from among them onto the battlefield under our control, and they put the rest of them on the bottom of their library in a random order. So this is great. It gives us an outlet for our clues that isn't just cracking them for card draw, which is totally fine, especially if we have a way to muck up an opponent's draw. If they have surveilled something to the top, or they've scryed, or they've, mystical tutored and put something on the top of their library, and we might want them just not to have it, or if we think it's a sweet permanent that we might want, we can crack a bunch of clues using Lannis to go digging into their library and find something. Or we can just sacrifice 0 clues to activate Lannis, which doesn't do anything, but if we sacrifice 1 clue, we can just have them reveal the top card of their library, and if we don't get access to it, it's got to go to the bottom of their library too. So pretty fun to be able to steal something from someone or mess up their draws, but at the very least, Lannis is here making us clues every time we have non-token creatures enter. Great. Next up is Mutagen Man, Living Ooze. This is from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set from earlier this year. X and double green gives us a 2/3 legendary Ooze mutant with trample that makes all activated abilities of artifact tokens we control cost 1 generic less to activate. It does not say to a minimum of 1. So if we have an artifact token that only costs 1 to crack, like I don't think there are any blood tokens in this deck, but if there were, they would be free. However, with something like a clue, this makes us able to crack our clues for just 1 generic mana rather than their standard 2, or crack our food for the same reason, the same amount. There you go. And when Mutagen Man enters, we make X Mutagen tokens, which are artifact tokens that only cost a single generic to activate. We pay 1, tap and sack them, and we put a 1/1 counter on a target creature at sorcery speed. It does say target creature, so it doesn't only apply to our creatures, but we're going to put them on our creatures and usually our commander. These are just a great way for us to get a bunch of extra pump just sitting around on our battlefield, or on the battlefield, I should say, or just being artifact tokens that add to our artifact count, which can be helpful as well. And if we put those pumps on Mutagen Man is already essentially, at its base, a 2-mana 2/3 trampler, so we make that bigger and bigger, and we're all set. Next, also from the Ninja Turtle set, is the Ooze. 2 generic for a legendary artifact that we can tap to exile a target card from a graveyard and make a mutagen token. It doesn't even have to be a creature card or a non-land card or something like that. Any card we can hate out of a graveyard and turn into a mutagen token, especially if it's an opponent's graveyard. But it could be ours if we just want to use our cards in graveyard for something. And whenever a creature we control with a 1/1 counter on it leaves the battlefield, we make a mutagen token for each 1/1 counter that was on it. So the play pattern here is exiling cards from graveyards, making mutagen tokens, putting counters on our creatures, and if those creatures happen to leave the battlefield, we will get our mutagen tokens back because each one of those made a counter. Now, we do have other sources of counters, and this is a nice way to turn those counters into artifact tokens, especially because if our creatures die during an opponent's turn, because maybe they were blocking, and they had 1/1 counters on them, we're going to have at least 1 mutagen token enter, which is an artifact entering the battlefield, and if our commander sees that and we haven't had one enter yet on that turn, we also get a card draw. Pretty great. Plus, look at these cuties. Love it. Next up, we have True Ancestry from the Avatar The Last Airbender set. This is a sorcery lesson, not relevant in this deck, but it's nice to learn something, for 1 and a green that lets us return up to 1 target permanent card from our graveyard to our hand and make a clue token. See, it says just create a clue token rather than investigate. So we get, at sorcery speed, an artifact into play, and we get a permanent back from our graveyard to our hand. If we didn't want to eat it with the ooze, we might as well get it back. Next is Depths of Desire from Original Ixalan. This is 2 and a blue for an instant that returns a creature to its owner's hand and makes a treasure token. So this is sweet. It is just unsummon for 3 mana, so not ideal, but it's an instant speed way to make a treasure, which isn't just a trinket that triggers our commander on an opponent's turn, but also treasure tokens we can crack for mana, so we might be able to use that for mana right away. It's almost like this is giving us a rebate on the spell, as well as triggering our commander. Pretty nice. Next up, we have Scourge of Standard, Oko, Thief of Crowns, from Throne of Eldraine. This is a Planeswalker, an Oko Planeswalker. 4 loyalty, for 1, a green, and a blue for a Planeswalker. +1, Oko, we can make a food token. So just repeatably triggering our commander every one of our turns, since we can't do it on our opponent's turn. Then also +1, target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature token, or creature with base power and toughness 3/3. So that's not until end of turn, that's permanent. So if we want to elk an opponent's commander, or their Galta, or their other big creatures, or it could be an artifact. We can do this to a Panharmonicon, or a Door to Nothingness, or whatever it may be. Now our opponent has a 3/3, and they can sure as heck attack us with that, but what they can't do is get the value out of that card that they may have paid for if if that was a spell they cast. Especially if it's their commander, they now have to find a way to get that commander to die so they can return it to the command zone, or otherwise bounce it, or exile it, or something, flicker it maybe. Otherwise it stays a 3/3 elk for as long as it's on the battlefield. So yeah, this is a powerful humble effect, or powerful for them, because it's almost like we're generous gifting them, since they're getting a 3/3 out of it. But we can hit creatures, we can hit artifacts, and it just lasts forever, and for whatever reason, this is not a minus ability. This adds to Oko's loyalty. Crazy. And we can -5 Oko to exchange control of target artifact or creature you control, and target creature an opponent controls with power 3 or less. So we can also steal creatures if we want to, by giving up one of our creatures or artifacts. In this deck, we have an awful lot of trinkets. It could just be one of the food that Oko's made for us. Or it could be any of our other artifact tokens that we maybe don't need, Giving an opponent a treasure or a clue is pretty nice. Giving them a food is a little less nice unless they have something that will give them payoffs for life gain. But what's especially nice is making a food, then making a commander into a 3/3, and then giving them our food and stealing their commander since it's a 3/3, and just not ever blocking with it. So the commander has changed controllers, but it hasn't changed zones. So unless they have a way to kill that creature, or bounce it, or flicker it or something, or at least flicker it in a way that returns it to its owner's control, then yeah, this makes it, us having stolen it means they can't even block with it in order to let it die and go back to the command zone. They just have to wait. So yeah, but of course we can steal plenty of other things that we haven't turned into elks. But yeah, if we want, Oko is in this deck to make food for us so we can trigger our commander, but we can just keep plussing Oko and the game is now a game of all will be elk. That's pretty fun. Next up is They Went This Way. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery that says search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle and investigate. This is just rampant growth, but 1 extra mana that gives us a clue. Seems solid. Next is Tireless Provisioner, and we've also got Tireless Tracker. I'm going to talk about them both. Tireless Provisioner and Tracker are both 2 and a green. They're both 3/2 creatures, and they both have landfall, make a trinket. Provisioner makes either a food or a treasure, and Tracker makes a clue, because the Tracker came first. So the idea here is, with both of these creatures, every time we play a land, we're going to draw a card if we haven't already played an artifact that turn, because our commander is going to see either a food or treasure or clue enter, and now we've got that trinket, so we get our commander to trigger, so we're all set. And because landfall is likely to happen on our turn, it also means it's going to be the second card we've drawn that turn, since we drew for our draw step, and so it also takes our lands and turns them into a way to make our commander into a 6/6 trampler. Very, very powerful. Obviously, treasures are also ramp, and clues are also card advantage. And whenever we sacrifice a clue, the Tireless Tracker gets a 1/1 counter on it. So that's clues that were made by the Tracker, or clues that were made any other way. So this one can actually get bigger, while this one is keeping us provisioned. Nice. Next we have another Turtles card. This is April O'Neil, Human Element, from the Turtles Commander product. I think this is the Commander product. This might be from the Turtle Team Up special thing. Anyway, it's not the main set. This is a 2/5 Legendary Human Detective for 3 and a blue that says whenever a player casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, we make a mutagen token. This is great because it doesn't just trigger on our castings, it triggers on everyone's castings. As long as it's an artifact or an instant or a sorcery, we get an extra little trinket, and those trinkets can be turned into counters for us. And this just goes really hard for us eventually. If we put we crack the mutagens and put those counters on April, April's already a great blocker. But just 2 of those, and April can block our commander if somehow that were able to be the case. So yeah, we've got how many instants and sorceries? We've got 11, we've got 35 artifacts. This is all on cast rather than on enter, the way that our commander is, but it works on every player. It's just very powerful for us. Next we have Ethereal Investigator, 3 and a blue for a 2/3 spirit with flying that says when it enters, we investigate a number of times equal to the number of opponents we have. So in a normal game, if no one's out yet, the Investigator comes in and we make 3 clues. So we're going to trigger our commander, and we've just got those clues hanging out, which is something we can use for our tireless tracker. We can use it to draw cards on opponents' turns and thereby trigger our commander with our second draw. Yeah, clues are great for us. And whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 1/1 spirit with flying. That's a white creature token. So we have a few of these in the deck. We're going to see some more of them in a little bit. But other cards that care about our second card drawn during the turn, just like our commander does. Since it turns our commander into a Dreadmaw, the Ethereal Investigator means we get a 1/1 as well. So we got a nice little blocker. Great. Next we have Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy. This is Kellen on his 3rd step of his story. Kellen was introduced in Wilds of Eldraine, and then we got to see him again in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and this one is him at Murders at Karlov Manor. And the set after this, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, he finally comes into his own as Kellen the Kid. It's a cool story. I liked Kellen and his little saga that we got to see through, and his vampire girlfriend Amalia. That's pretty fun. Anyway, Kellen is a adventure creature. If you haven't seen Adventures before, the way this works is you can play Kellen as just a creature, which is 2 a green and a blue for a 3/4 legendary human fairy detective, or you can send him on an adventure first, which is to tail the suspect. If you cast the adventure, you then exile this card, and you can cast the creature half of it later, which is either on that same turn or on a later turn, just at normal timing rules. So either you get the creature, or you get the adventure and then the creature, but it's not the other way around. If Kellen is in play, there's no way to cast this adventure spell unless we somehow bounce Kellen and cast it from our hand, which then would exile Kellen, and we can cast Kellen himself from exile. You get it. So the way this works is Kellen himself is 2 a green and a blue for a 3/4 legendary human fairy detective with flying and vigilance, and whenever he attacks, we can destroy up to 1 target artifact, and if we controlled it, we draw a card. So we've got so many little trinkets that if we want to attack with Kellen, we can just blow up one of our own trinkets and draw a card. Or we can attack with Kellen, and he's sort of like a bigger Trigon Predator that doesn't have to connect in order to blow something up. We can destroy someone's Soul Ring. We can destroy someone's, like I mentioned before, Panharmonicon, or their Coveted Jewel. Probably don't want to blow up their Coveted Jewel since we could steal that. But yeah, Kellen is a great way to repeatedly remove things with this sort of naturalize effect, or to turn our artifacts into cards by destroying them. And we can send Kellen on an adventure called Tail the Suspect, a sorcery for a green and a blue that lets us investigate and gives us an extra land drop this turn, which is great. We don't draw a card to maybe find that land, but we do get a clue that maybe finds us a land if we crack it, or since this is a sorcery, if this is the first artifact we've had enter when we make that clue, our commander is going to draw us another card, which means Tail the Suspect sort of says investigate and then growth spiral, and then explore, I should say. Draw a card and you may play an extra land this turn. That seems pretty good to me. Next up, we have Emissary Green. This is such a cool card. I really think that the new legends from the Ravnica Clue Edition set are so cool. I wanted to do every legend from that set, and I may still one day. But yeah, we have both of the ones from our colors in this deck. And the first one we're going to see is Emissary Green. This is a 3/3 legendary human advisor for 4 and a green that says whenever Emissary Green attacks, starting with us, each player votes for profit or security. We make a number of treasure tokens equal to twice the number of profit votes, and we put a number of 1/1 counters on each creature we control equal to the number of security votes. So this is really, really cool. Emissary Green attacking as a 3/3 for 5 doesn't feel great, but if we know we can make him a 4/4 because we're going to vote for security and put a counter on all of our creatures, including him, that's great. Any of our opponents who doesn't want to make our creatures bigger is going to vote for profit, and every one of those profit votes is 2 more treasures for us. Those treasures don't even come in tapped. So if we got several cards in our hand and we're a blue deck, our opponents might be like, we don't want to give them any extra ramp, so yeah, we'll give them more counters, I guess. And every counter we get goes on each of our creatures, including our commander. So they're just making us more of a threat either way. But we have to attack with Emissary Green in order for that to happen. So some of our evasive abilities in this deck are pretty nice to add to Emissary Green or use for Emissary Green. Or we just attack someone whose shields are down and we're all set. Finally, in this section, we have Bootlegger's Stash, a card from Streets of New Capenna. Really, really fun. 5 and a green for an artifact that says lands you control have tap to create a treasure token. So what that means is, sort of, every land taps for any color of mana you need, because they all have a new ability to make a treasure token, which we'll enter, and we can immediately crack it for any color we need. But it's not just that those treasures can tap for mana, it means that we have a reason to tap out before every one of our untap steps with our lands, because every time we do, on each player's turn, we just tap one of our lands, make a treasure. We haven't lost mana since that treasure's sitting there, ready for us to tap it for mana, but we have triggered our commander, and we've drawn a card. Bootlegger Stash in play, if we don't need to cast a bunch of spells on our turn, means guaranteed draw a card every turn, and you don't lose mana for it. And on top of all that, if this weren't great enough, I mean, it's 6 mana, don't get me wrong, but on top of all that, Bootlegger Stash itself is an artifact. So we play this, and if it's the first artifact we've played on our turn with our commander in play, we're going to draw a card off of that as well, and we're all set to make treasures over the course of the next turn cycle. This can really change the texture of how this deck plays, and I like to throw in a few cards every deck that change that deck's texture, just to have some variety, and I think this is just a lot of fun to play. So that covers our Trinkets section. We're going to go now to our actual tokens section. Not all of these tokens are artifact tokens. Some of these cards make non-artifact tokens, but sometimes they give us artifacts in other ways. So we'll see them. First we have Desculpting Blast. This is a removal spell. It's 1 and a blue for an instant that returns a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and if that permanent was an attacking creature, we also make a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying, and this token can block only creatures with flying. So this ability, some people call high flying. It's flying too high to block anything that doesn't fly. So yeah, also pretty cute. So yeah, Desculpting Blast is sweet. It's a nice instant speed way for us to protect ourselves from an attacker and trigger our commander on that attacking player's turn. And if we were able to draw a second card off of some other effect, like one of our clues, then having the drone enter triggers our commander, cracking the clue triggers our commander again, makes our commander into a 6/6, and since our opponent is now attacking with 1 fewer creatures than they thought, since we bounced 1, maybe that 6/6 commander of ours is enough to kill another one of their creatures, and it's like we've hit them for multiple, we've gotten rid of multiple ones of their creatures, in addition to helping us ourselves out. Nice. Plus, remember, this is us bouncing one of their creatures, and we're losing Desculpting Blast since we're casting it, but if we make that drone, and we're drawing a card off of it, we're replacing Desculpting Blast. So it's like we are 2 for 1ing them, or we're sort of 0 for 1ing them, if you want to think of it, or we're 1 for 0ing them. There you go. We're getting rid of one of their things. We're not losing any of our things, since we lose, but we gain. Yeah, you get it. Next is Joriel Monvoli Recluse. Love this card. Incredible, incredible Izzy art. Just incredible, and just a fun card, and a great character in Dominaria. This is a 1/2 legendary human druid for 1 and a green that says when we draw our second card each turn, we make a 2/2 green cat creature token. Sweet, just a second card draw reward for us. And since we're drawing so many cards in this deck, Joriel also lets us pay 4 and double green, and until end of turn, all of our creatures have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of cards in our hand, which could be pretty big. Now this is one of several instances in this deck that changes the base power and toughness of our creatures, which means if Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur has seen us draw our second card, which they most likely have, then they are a 6/6, or they are base power and toughness XX from Joriel, depending on which one of those two resolved second. So if we are in a situation where we only have 4 cards in hand, let's say, and we want to activate Joriel anyway, since we've got a bunch of 1/1s or just these 2/2 cats and we want to make them big, what we do is we play our second card, we let Joriel's trigger resolve whenever we feel like it, but prior to letting our commander's second draw ability turn them into a 6/6 trampler, before we let that resolve, we activate Joriel's second ability, make everything base power and toughness XX, which in this example is 4, and then our commander's ability will resolve and overwrite that base power and toughness of 4/4, make it a 6/6, and make them trample. So yeah, this is one of the ways we can kind of mess with power and toughness, so it's worth being aware of how the stack works with that. But yeah, otherwise Jor-El is here to be a 2-mana creature that makes 2/2 creatures every time we draw our second card each turn, which is a lot of the time going to be at least once per turn cycle and sometimes more. Next we have Detective of the Month. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human detective with Ascend. Ascend means we get a status called the City's Blessing. If at any point we control an Ascend permanent and 10 or more permanents. As long as we have both at the same time, at any point, it doesn't matter if the Ascend permanent leaves the battlefield or if our permanent count drops below 10, for the rest of the game, we get the City's Blessing, and so we are #blessed. And as long as we have the City's Blessing with Detective of the Month in play, detectives we control can't be blocked, which includes the Detective of the Month itself. And whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. So, similar trigger to Jor-El, we're getting a white and blue detective instead of a green cat, but it's a 2/2, and that's good. But if the Detective of the Month is in play and we have the City's Blessing, that's a detective, and detectives can't be blocked as long as we have the City's Blessing. So these are unblockable creatures, which are pretty sweet to be able to pump up with Jor-El if we want to. It's also notable that April O'Neil is a detective. We also have Kellen as a detective. Kellen has flying, so he may not be blockable anyway, but if he were to be flying, that's okay. Detective of the Month will make him unblockable as long as we are #blessed. And we'll make April O'Neil unblockable, which is a great way to attack with April and not have to worry about her dying, and just sneak in a little damage, or maybe a lot of damage if she's been hit with a bunch of mutagen tokens. Great. Next we have Nettlecyst. Technically makes a token because it makes a 0/0 black Phyrexian germ creature token when it enters and attaches itself to it, because this is an equipment with living weapon. But it costs 3 and equips for 2 for anything other than that germ, obviously, since it auto-equips the germ. And it gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment we control, which includes itself, the Nettlecyst. So yeah, this is essentially an equipment that we want to put on our commander, since our commander will have trample when we attack with it once it's made itself into a Dreadmaw. And Nettlecyst is pumping it up by at least +1/+1, because for each artifact and or enchantment, and this is itself an artifact, of course. Now we only have 2 enchantments in the deck, but we have a lot of artifacts and a lot of ways to make artifact tokens, so Nettlecyst could be a way that we just win the game against someone. We have this enter, it triggers our commander, we get our second draw, our commander triggers from their first ability, becomes a 6/6 trampler, we spend 2 more mana and put the Nettlecyst on our commander, and our Nettlecyst might be giving +15/+15, +20/+20. I mean, +15/+15, unblocked is 21 commander damage. So yeah, this can be a win con all its own. Next we have Sicaran Infiltrator. This is from the Warhammer 40k decks. This is a 1/2 artifact creature, human soldier, for 2 and a blue, that has flash, so a great way for us to get this in on an opponent's turn and trigger our commander, and Benediction of the Omnissiah. When it enters, we draw a card. So almost guaranteed, I mean, if we play this on an opponent's turn, we're going to get to draw a card off of this and off of our commander, since it will have seen this artifact enter and drawn us a card. So our commander is definitely going to be a 6/6 trample on our opponent's turn. Trample not relevant, 6/6 always relevant. But Sicaran Infiltrator also has Squad for 2 generic. That means as an additional cost, we can pay any number of times 2 additional generic mana, and when we do, Sicaran Infiltrator will enter and make that many copies of itself, which is great because each one of them draws us a card. So us paying an extra 2 when we cast this to essentially draw a card is like this has built-in clues, if you want to think of it that way, but rather than those clues having to leave the battlefield, and therefore we're decreasing our artifact count, they are copies of Sicaran Infiltrator, which doesn't just make more artifacts in play, but it also makes more creatures in play, since they're all artifact creatures. So this is us saying, for 3 mana, we get a 1/2 flash that will draw us a card. That's fine. And for every extra 2, we get an extra 1 of those, an extra creature, an extra artifact, and an extra card. So this can be a lot of power for us, and it scales with the point in the game we're at. So yeah, lots of value from the Sicaran Infiltrator. Next up, we have Stridehanger Automaton, a card from the Aetherdrift Commander product that I really think is cool. 3 generic mana for a 1/4 artifact creature construct that gives all of our Thopters +1/+1. And if 1 or more artifact tokens would be created under our control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying are created instead. So This is our Academy manufacturer for the deck. We could put in actual Academy manufacturer, but I just didn't think we had enough trinkets to really justify it and make it great, although it's pretty great no matter what. But yeah, why have, or we didn't have enough trinkets of those specific types, the food, clue, treasure type. We could have gone heavier into that, but I wanted to do fun stuff like lander tokens and mutagens and what have you. So yeah, Stride Hanger Automaton means every time we get one of our trinkets, or any of our artifact tokens that are also creatures, artifact creature tokens, like the drone we mentioned with Disculpting Blast, then we're also going to get a 1/1 Flying Thopter, which is, again, another artifact token. So yeah, this is not really helping us trigger our commander, since we probably already had an artifact token. You know, we're going to be making an artifact token in the process of getting that Thopter, so we're going to trigger our commander either way. But adding extra 1/1 flyers to our board, that sounds pretty good to me. But they're not even 1/1 flyers, because the automaton gives them +2/+2. Great. Or it gives them +1/+1 to make them into 2/2s. So we're like making artifact wind drakes. Having a lot of those seems pretty great to me. Next up is Thopter Fabricator, another way for us to make Thopters from Ether Drift. 2 and a blue for a 4/4 vehicle that crews for 2. It flies, when it's crewed of course, and whenever we draw our second card, we make a 1/1 Thopter with flying. So yeah, we're getting another second card draw benefit here. We're getting more Thopters in play. If the Stride Hanger Automaton is in play, those are now 2/2 flyers. But yeah, helps us out. Next, we've seen the Ethereal Investigator. It makes us 1/1 Flying Spirits. We have not seen Use Social Engineering from Edge of Eternities. This is 3 and double green for an enchantment with landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. This is great. It's a classic sort of Zendikar's Royal. Is that what it's called? I think so. Yeah, Zendikar's Royal effect. The 3 and double green for landfall make a 2/2. But with this, these lands are coming in as 2/2 artifact creatures. They're robots. So it's sort of similar to with our landfall effects from our Tireless Provisioner and Tireless Tracker, in that we play a land and we get to trigger our commander because an artifact is entered. With this, they're not trinkets, they're actual artifact creatures, so we're getting 2/2s. We're essentially making a robo-bear every time we landfall, and thereby making our commander bigger and drawing ourselves a card. Pretty good. And Use Social Engineering has Warp for 1 and a green. Warp is an alternate casting cost. It lets us spend 1 and a green rather than 3 and double green to play this, and it comes in and has a delayed trigger. At the end step, we will exile it, and then we are allowed to cast it on a later turn from exile, similar to with Adventures, but Adventures don't force you to wait until a later turn. However, what's nice about this is maybe we have our commander in play on turn 3, and we want to trigger our commander on turn 4, but we just don't have a way to make artifacts just yet, or artifacts in hand. What we do is we warp in Use Social Engineering for 2. We've still got 1 mana up. We play our land for the turn. We get a robot. That robot is an artifact, triggers our commander, lets us draw our second card for the turn, and when we do, we get to make our commander into a 6/6 trampler, and now we're able to attack, and we know we've got a robot to block with that same turn. End of turn, Use Social Engineering goes to exile, and if we really want to, next turn, we just play our 5th land, and then play Use Social Engineering from exile. So now it's permanently in play, until it's removed, of course, and we don't get a landfall trigger for it that turn, but yeah, it lets us, with Warp, we get to sneak in the possibility of extra robots earlier than this just being in at, turn 5. So yeah. Finally, in this section, we have Mechan Assembler. This is also from Edge of Eternities. It's 4 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature, Robot Artificer, that says whenever another artifact we control enters, we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, but only once each turn. So yeah, this is not helping to trigger our commander because we're having an artifact enter in order to trigger this. But when we do, we're making an extra robot. Extra robots are always nice. So getting extra artifacts is pretty sweet. In a sense, this is a little bit like our Stride Hanger Automaton, because if we cast a spell on an opponent's turn that makes a clue or a treasure or a food or something like that, that's an artifact entering, and it will make us a 2/2 robot from the assembler as well. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a token. It can be any artifact, as opposed to the token artifacts that Stride Hanger Automaton requires. But this is a way for us to just build out our board bigger and bigger and bigger, yeah, as we play more artifacts or make more trinkets and artifact tokens. Nice. So yeah, that is our tokens section. And I want to check in with one more section. This is our second draw section. We've seen all these already, but these are all the cards we have that trigger when we draw our second card during our turn, and they all give us value in the form of a creature. We get a 2/2 cat with Joriel, a 2/2 detective with Detective of the Month, a Thopter with Thopter Fabricator, and a Flying Spirit with Ethereal Investigator. So they all help us out populating our board beyond the already reasonable creature count we have, but it's just, I wanted to be clear, these are all triggering the same way our commander is, but our commander becomes bigger with a sort of a go tall strategy. These all help us go wide and let us go tall as well, let us become unblockable, let us draw more cards. You know, we're doing a lot with this. We can even use use 2 Thopters that the Fabricator has made to crew itself, and now it's a 4/4 flyer, which is pretty good too. Yeah. And that covers our second draw section. And oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm just kidding. You don't. I do appreciate it, but you don't have to like the video just because I asked you to. I appreciate you being here with me either way. Thank you for joining me today. So let's keep going. We're going to go to our support sections for the deck, starting now with our card advantage section. As usual, I've tagged this as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards do the draw a card action. They just give us access to more cards. For example, Bushwhack. This is a single green for a sorcery that says, choose one, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So that's Lay of the Land, similar to what we got with Many Partings. Or we can have target creature we control fight a creature we don't control. So we can find a bush, or we can whack something. This is a really cool card that I really enjoy, because early on, it makes sure we're going to hit our land drops by giving us a Lay of the Land effect. Later on, we can just use it as removal, especially if we've had an artifact enter and we've drawn our second card that turn. So our commander is now a 6/6. We can kill anything, toughness 6 or less. Hopefully it has power 5 or less, so our commander doesn't die in the process. Sounds good. We've seen Many Partings. It also finds us a land and puts it in our hand. Secrets of the Key investigates for us, and so a lot of the cards in this section are here because they make clues, and clues can turn into card draw. It's pretty good. Not so much Deduce, even though it does make us a clue, it just draws us a card on its own. Next is Instant Ramen. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact food with flash that enters and draws us a card, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to gain 3 life, which is just the food text. So this is here because it has flash. So it's instant. Get it? It's a very silly card, but it's a cool one, and it helps us do several different things. Most specifically, it helps us turn our commander into a 6/6 on an opponent's turn. Because we cast Instant Ramen, flash it in on our opponent's turn, it will enter, draw us a card, but it's also an artifact that's entered, so our commander will draw us a card as well. So now we've drawn 2 cards that turn, and we're off to the races. Our commander's able to block as a 6/6, or do whatever we need them to do as a 6/6, and that sounds pretty good to me. Next up is a cool one, Lodestone Needle. This is from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. It's 1 and a blue for an artifact with flash, so we can do the flash and artifact in trick with this as well. It says when it enters, we tap up to 1 target artifact or creature and put 2 stun counters on it. So we shut down an opponent's potential attacker or potential blocker for a couple of turns. We can shut down activated abilities on something, especially if it's an artifact. That's pretty great. Good flexibility there with those stun counters. It's temporary removal. But we also have the ability to craft with the Lodestone Needle. We pay 2 and a blue, exile the Lodestone Needle, and we exile any other artifact we control, including one of our trinkets or otherwise artifact tokens, or an artifact card from our graveyard if we don't want to try and get it back. And then we return the Lodestone Needle, transformed under its owner's control. We do all this only at sorcery speed. So this is really great, because it comes back in as the Guidestone Compass, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it's an artifact. So let's say we flash this in on an opponent's turn, tap down one of their things. We've had this entered on an opponent's turn, so hopefully, at the very least, our commander's drawn us a card. But then, on our next turn, we craft with it. It will exile itself and re-enter the battlefield, so it's an artifact entering the battlefield, so it will trigger our commander again. So we've gotten 2 triggers off of our commander using this card, and all it cost us was maybe, a food token or something. And we get the Guidestone Compass's actual effect, which is pay 1 and tap it, and target creature you control explores, but only at sorcery speed. Exploring is a little weird. I wish there was a way to better summarize this effect, but it says, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, it goes into your hand. Otherwise, you put a counter on the creature that explored, and then put the card back on top of your library or into your graveyard. So in a way, what you're doing is, hey everyone, look at the top card of my library. Oh, it's a land, I'm gonna draw it. Oh, it's not a land. Okay, the creature exploring gets a counter, and then I surveil that card. It goes back on top of the library or in the graveyard. It's weird. It was weird when it came out in original Ixalan, but it's not hard to remember how it works once you've used it a bunch of times. And it's powerful. It gets cards off the top of your library if they're lands, so you're always hitting your land drops if you need to, and anything that's on top of your library other than lands that you don't want, you can just get into your graveyard. Problem solved. Plus, puts counters on your commander, or whatever creature you want to pump up with it. Next up is Lannis. We've seen Lannis makes clues, so we can use those to draw cards. Next, we have another 2-mana artifact with Flash. It's Manhole Cover from the Ninja Turtles Eternal set. 2-mana, artifact, it's got Flash. When it enters, target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Pretty nice way to protect our commander. And we can pay 2 and sack it, and have target player draw a card. So yes, we can use this politically and spend our mana and sacrifice our permanent in order to make someone else draw a card, but usually we're having ourselves draw the card here. And that's what we want to do. Because for 4 mana, on an opponent's turn, this is 2 mana, to flash this in, draw a card off of our commander, and hopefully make our commander indestructible, then crack it for 2, draw a second card, now our commander is a 6/6, and it's still indestructible. That's pretty good. Next up, we have Sarenth Steelseeker. This is from the Brothers War. It is a 1 and a green, 1/2 human artificer scout that says whenever an artifact we control enters, not when we cast it, just any artifact, including tokens when they enter, we look at the top card of our library. If it's a land, we can reveal it and put it in our hand. If we don't put it in our hand, we can put it in our graveyard. So this is, with 2 small exceptions, explore. The big exception is there's no way for us to put counters on a creature with this. That's too bad. But the other difference is we don't reveal the card unless we put it in the graveyard or it's a land and we put it in our hand. If we decide to keep it on top of our library because either it is a land that we don't want in our hand or it's not a land and we don't want it in our graveyard, then our opponents haven't seen it. Because remember, Explore reveals that top card. So the little bit of hidden information, I don't know if it's as good as the counter we would get on a creature, but Sarenth Steelseeker would probably just put that counter on itself if it was just exploring, so I'm pretty good with this. Just like that Explore card we saw a minute ago, Sarenth Steelseeker gives us the ability to keep our hand full of lands that we want to be able to make as our land drops, and filter through our deck otherwise for something we most need, and it's every time we have any artifact enter, including on opponent's turns and including token artifacts. Great. We've seen True Ancestry. It regrows a permanent card and makes us a clue, which draws us a card. Sicarian Infiltrator draws us a card when it or any of its squad mates enter. They went this way, makes us a clue, draws us a card. Same thing is true of Tireless Tracker. Next we have Uthros Researchcraft. This is a spacecraft. This is an artifact for 2 and a blue with the ability Station. Station is a little bit like Crew, but the way it works is this. At sorcery speed, you can tap any other creature you control, and you put counters, charge counters, equal to that creature's power on Uthros Researchcraft, and as it gets more of those counters, it gains abilities, or gains traits, essentially. Once it's got 3 or more counters, whenever we cast an artifact spell, we draw a card and put an extra counter on the Researchcraft. So every artifact becomes a card and a counter, and hopefully, since this is happening at sorcery speed, it's drawing us our second card, so we're getting to make our commander bigger, and then that artifact's going to resolve, enter, and our commander is going to get bigger, or going to draw us another card, at least the first time each turn. That's pretty good. And once we have 12 or more charge counters on the Researchcraft, it retains its first ability, but it also becomes a 0/8 flying creature with +1/+0 for each artifact we control. A 0/8 creature is already a great blocker, but one that's getting probably, I don't think it's an overestimation to say by this time it's probably an 8/8 flyer. If it's not a much bigger one, it could be a 20/8 flyer, without much work from us, from all the artifacts we're casting and all of the artifact trinkets we're making. This is pretty sweet. And even if we don't ever station it up to becoming a creature, being a source of replacing every artifact spell in our hand whenever we cast it with a card draw is pretty good. Now, if we do that, it's eventually going to become a flyer because it puts a counter on itself as part of that trigger. But that's good. It just means we have a big flying creature, which is probably removal bait. So they're not using that removal on maybe our commander. Good. Yeah, that's the craft. Next, Ethereal Investigator makes us a bunch of clues when it comes in. Kellen has that Tail the Suspect sorcery adventure that lets us investigate. Next we have Sad Robot. It's the Solemn Simulacrum. 4 generic mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem that when it enters, we may Rampant Growth, search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. And when it dies, we may draw a card. So we're not counting on the Sad Robot dying, but we don't mind if it dies because it will replace itself after it's found us a land. That's pretty good. Next we have Vibranium Strike Gauntlets. This is an equipment with flash for 4 generic mana that equips for 3, but when it enters, we attach it to a creature we control. So for 4 mana, we can, on an opponent's turn, flash this in, attach it to our commander, and our commander, or whatever creature we've put it on, gets +3/+0, Trample, and Curiosity. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So this is sweet, especially if we're able to draw a second card that turn, or another card that turn, because we flash this in, it's going to enter, our commander's going to draw us a card, and if we've drawn another card already, or if we can draw another card before damage, our commander is a 6/6, by which I mean a 9/6, and that's pretty good. Then we just hang on to this, so we attack with our commander on other turns. We've got Evasion, we've got Pump, and we've got even more card draw. That's pretty great. And it's not that expensive to re-equip it if we have to. Next we have our other Ravnica edition, Clue Edition card. It's Senator Peacock. 3 and double blue for a 3/4 legendary human advisor from, I believe, the Azorius. That says artifacts you control are clues in addition to their other types and have the clue text. Pay 2 and sack them to draw a card. So every artifact we have, including our actual cards, like our Sad Robot, is a clue as well and has this text. But so do our treasures, so do our foods, our 2/2 robots, or our Thopters. All of them are also clues in addition to everything else that we know about them. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So this is sort of doing an impression of Key to the City for us, in just a different order. It essentially says, sacrifice any artifact, and one of your creatures can't be blocked, and also draw a card to replace that artifact. So for 2 mana, we make our commander unblockable, and we have to sacrifice any artifact, and it could be an artifact we just had enter, which made our commander draw us a card already, and made them bigger. This is a terrific way to make our commander bigger on other players' turns because it gives us more access to the possibility of drawing cards and thereby drawing our second card and triggering our commander's first ability. But it also gives us an outlet for all of our artifacts and lets us use them for things that we might not have otherwise been able to use them for. If we're making a bunch of food tokens and we just don't need them for anything other than the enters trigger that our commander gets from them, suddenly they're clues, and that's super powerful for us. There you go. Next we have Shimmer Dragon, originally from the Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks, precons. This is from the Alayla deck, I believe. But it's a really cool card, and look how happy this dragon looks, just really cute. This is 4 and double blue for a 5/6 dragon with flying that has hexproof as long as we control 4 or more artifacts. So a little bit better than Metalcraft, and it's a hexproof 5/6 flyer for 6, which is pretty good. But it also says tap 2 untapped artifacts you control and draw a card. This is an incredible card draw engine for this deck because we have so many artifact tokens we're going to be making, many of which we don't have an intention of using the way they're sort of intended to use. Specifically like food, we can tap 2 food and draw a card. Or we can tap 2 clues and draw a card. And because clues don't require us to tap them in order to pay 2 and sack them, we can still crack them even when they're tapped. In addition, this deck has some equipment in it. We can tap those equipment because tapped equipment work just as well as untapped equipment unless they have a tap ability, which of course Vibranium Strike Gauntlets does not. And Shimmer Dragon is going to be able to turn those into card draw as well. So easy for us to get even more cards every turn and make our commander bigger whenever we need to. And at instant speed. Sweet. Finally in this section we have Thought Monitor. 6 and a blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct with affinity for artifacts. So it costs a generic less to cast for each artifact we control. So usually this is a 1 mana card. It only costs a blue since we reduce all 6 of the generic mana from affinity. We may not do that. We might want to cast it earlier than that, or maybe we're just, we're tripping over our deck and we're not able to quite get all the artifacts out that we want, but usually it's very easy to get 6 artifacts into play and cast this as a 1 mana 2/2 flyer that draws 2 cards for us when it enters, which, again, it's going to enter. If our commander sees it, it's going to be 3 cards because our commander will trigger as well, assuming this is the first artifact that came in that turn. So yeah, a 2/2 flyer for 1 that kind of comes with an Ancestral Recall, that seems pretty sweet to me. So that is our card advantage section. Let's go now to our acceleration section, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp. Of course, we are running Sol Ring. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. It's so powerful, it goes in every deck, almost every deck in Magic, but in Commander that is, but a lot more than people think. And at the very least, Sol Ring is sitting here saying, tap this artifact and any clue, and crack any clue, or crack any food, or crack 2 mutagens, whatever you need. Sol Ring helps us out with all of it, and, our big spells, of which we have a few. Next up is Arcane Signet, 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, blue or green. It's a 2 mana untapped mana rock that makes both of our colors. Of course we're running this. It's essentially an auto-include in decks for a reason. Next is Simic Signet, another 2 mana rock, 2 generic for an artifact that if we pay 1 into it and tap it, it makes 2 mana for us, a green and a blue. So we're tapping 2 sources, whatever we're using to pay the 1, and the Signet itself, and we're getting 2 mana, but we're fixing our mana in the process. So whatever color we may need in that moment, we've got at least 1 of it, and we don't even have to have spent colored mana to do this. We could have tapped our Sol Ring and used 1 of its colorless mana and turned it into 2 colored mana with the Signet. Good. Another 2 mana untapped rock, even better, is Talisman of Curiosity. This is 2 generic for an artifact that taps for a generic mana, but it also taps for green or blue if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. And as I often like to say, we always are. Because if you don't need colored mana from the Talisman, you just tap it for colorless. But if you need colored mana, what does it mean to need that mana? It means that you want to cast a spell that otherwise you wouldn't be able to cast unless you tap this for colored mana. Which is a different way of saying, would you pay a life in order to cast an extra spell you otherwise wouldn't have been able to cast? I would. I would do it over and over and over. Because even though each time I do that, it puts me 1 life closer to dying, it also puts me up 1 spell in the number of spells I've cast in the game, and the more spells you cast, the likelier you are to win. The better you're going to have, the better you're going to be doing in the game, the more fun you're going to be having, So paying a life, 4, 5, or 6 times over the course of the game is 4, 5, 6 extra spells you've cast, and that sounds pretty powerful. Or, things you've activated, like Joriel's activated ability. This is just really very strong. It doesn't even come in tapped, and if we don't need colored mana, we can just tap it for colorless. Next up, we have Depths of Desire. It makes a treasure when we cast it. Then we have Heaped Harvest. This card, I really like this card from Bloomburrow. This is 2 and a green for a food that says whenever it enters and when we sacrifice it, we can search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So we get a rampant growth effect. And it has the food text, pay 2, tap and sack it, gain 3 life. So we're paying 5 mana, 2 and a green, and then 2 more over the course of, 1 or more turns. We can do all 5 in the same turn, or we can wait till a later turn to crack it. And we're getting an Explosive Vegetation effect, 2 basics entering the battlefield tapped for us. So Explosive Veggies costs 4 that we have to spend all at once. Heaped Harvest costs 5, technically, that we can use over the course of multiple turns, and is an artifact, so it's also triggering our commander and replacing itself in our hand when it comes in and finds us a basic land. So it's doing a good impression of the Sad Robot that we can crack on its own. And if we have something like Senator Peacock in play, we can crack this as a clue, because all of our artifacts are clues, and we are sacrificing it at that point, which will still trigger it to find us a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Great. We've seen they went this way. It's another 3 mana Rampant Growth that comes with an artifact, but this artifact is a clue. So cool. Very similar cards in a certain way. Tireless Provisioner, of course, ramps us by making treasures when we have lands enter under our control. Kellen ramps us because the Tail of Suspect sorcery lets us investigate and gives us an extra land drop that turn. Pretty likely for us to have another land in hand to do it. Sad Robot enters and gives us a Rampant Growth. Emissary Green, any of the votes for treasure, or for a profit rather, give us double treasures. And Bootlegger Stash lets us turn all of our lands into treasure producers, which can stick around beyond the turn that we've made them, so we've gotten a little ahead of the game. And that is our acceleration section. Let's go now to our interaction section, which as usual I've just tagged as removal. Bushwhack is where we start. It's a fight spell, if we don't want to use it as a lay of the land. Haywire Might is next. This is a single generic mana for an artifact creature insect, so because it's an artifact, it will trigger our commander if they haven't triggered already this turn. When the Haywire Might dies, we gain 2 life, and we can, it's a 1/1 by the way, and we can pay a green and sack it to exile a non-creature artifact or a non-creature enchantment. So it's not quite the same as Naturalize, because it is exiling, but it can't hit creature artifacts, or, artifact creatures or artifact artifact creatures or enchantment creatures. There you go. However, it is just 1 to bring it in, trigger our commander, and 1 more to exile something and also gain us 2 life in the process. That's okay. Next is Collective Resistance. 1 and a green for an instant with escalate for a green, meaning we get to choose 1 or more of these modes, and for each mode we choose beyond the first, it costs an extra green. So if we want all 3, it costs 1 and triple green. Yeah, and the options are destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or give a creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It doesn't even have to be one of our creatures. So this is a great way to protect our commander in addition to blowing up a problematic artifact and or enchantment. Or maybe we just want to blow up 1 or both of these things and we don't need to make something hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. But yeah, I like to use this as a more protective spell that also has a removal effect on it. Next up, we've seen Sculpting Blast lets us bounce a non-land permanent, and if it was attacking, we get a 1/1 flying drone artifact creature token. Hunter's Bow is next. This is from the Assassin's Creed set. 1 and a green for an equipment that equips for 1, gives that creature Reach and Ward 2. Reach is a great reason for us to trigger our commander on our opponent's turns and make them into a dinosaur, because then we can block flyers with our 6/6er. Great. And when Hunter's Bow enters, we attach it to a creature we control, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature we don't control. So the way we want to use this is on our turn, we cast Hunter's Bow, it will enter, and it has its enters trigger, and our commander has a trigger from it entering if this is the first artifact that came in that turn. We let our commander's ability resolve first, drawing us a card, which is our second card, which triggers our commander's first ability, which we let that resolve as well, making our commander into a 6/6 trampling dinosaur. Then Hunter's Bow resolves, attaches itself to our commander, and our commander is now 6 power, so it does damage equal to its power to a target we don't control. And so this was another a removal effect that's essentially a bite effect rather than fight. And it leaves behind these abilities on our commander, Reach and Ward 2. Little protection, a little bit of a use on an opponent's turn, and if we really need to use this to re-equip this on something, it's only 1 to do so. Lodestone Needle, when it enters, taps an artifact or a creature and puts 2 stun counters on it. Temporary removal, but it's removal. Depths of Desire is an unsummon. Imprisoned in the Moon is 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker and makes that permanent into a colorless land that taps for colorless and causes it to lose all other card types and abilities. So I like this card as removal in my blue decks because it's a great way to shut down the scariest planeswalkers, or more importantly, creatures that you see on other players' playmats. Particularly, it's great with commanders, because if someone's got a value commander like Voya, is it Jaws of the Conclave, whatever that is, the Naya Elves commander, or is something else that's just providing them a lot of value, and you hit them with Imprisoned in the Moon, then unless they have a way to interact with enchantments or with their own lands, then their commander is just going to stay a land until they find an answer or can bargain with a different player to get an answer that will remove Imprisoned in the Moon. Because they can't bounce their own commander if that commander is a land, unless their bounce spell can affect lands. So yeah, pretty cool as a way to shut it down. It does ramp them a little bit because it turns that permanent into a land that taps for mana. But yeah, this is a solid removal spell, and I like to put it in most of my blue decks. Next, we've got Oko. Oko, of course, can turn something into an elk, which is, I mean, it's Kinrith's transformation, technically, without us drawing a card, but it can hit any artifact or creature, and it's permanent. So yeah, pretty good. Kellen attacks and destroys an artifact, or just an artifact, and if it's ours, we draw a card. And last, we have Junkwinder. I love Junkwinder. Junkwinder has affinity for tokens, because it's this big serpent that's got friends that are squirrels. For 5 and double blue, we get a 5/6 serpent that never costs 5 and double blue because it has affinity for tokens, meaning the generic mana cost is reduced for every token we have, not just token creatures. If we've got 5, clues and treasures and mutagens, whatever we may have, then Junkwinder's a 5/6 serpent for double blue, and that's it. And whenever a token we control enters, we tap a non-land permanent an opponent controls, and it won't untap during its controller's next untap step. This comes before the introduction of stun counters, so it's as though that thing has a stun counter on it, but only one, but it doesn't. It just simply does not untap. And this is a way in our deck that if we're making several different tokens, we can tap down a bunch of stuff and essentially tap down an entire player's board of defenders, and now all of our creatures are unblockable for that turn, but also for the next turn cycle, because every other player is going to get a chance to attack the player we tapped all their stuff down of, with those things still tapped down. The only way that they would have blockers is if we didn't hit all of them, or if we go to their turn before anyone else's, and they play some more blockers. But if we hit, the opponent to our right with our Junkwinder's triggers, when we get a bunch of tokens in play, and we tap down all their stuff, we can attack them unblockably, so can the opponent to our left, and so can the opponent across from us. Then we get to that player's turn, and they have to play some things in order to have blockers, because all their stuff that we tapped down doesn't untap. So we get to swing in again, and so do the other two players. So Junkwinder, in a turn where we get a whole bunch of triggers, can really change the way the game plays out, and it sort of flies under the radar. So I really like this card. I think it's very powerful. I'd like to see more people play it. Yeah. That is our interaction section. We do have a couple of Wraths in our deck. These are our sweepers. Aetherize is a great one. It's really more of an interactive spell, a protection spell, I should say. But it does sweep the board for someone. It's 3 and a blue for an instant that returns all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. We can use this on ourselves if we really want to protect our creatures, I guess. A lot of our creatures are tokens, so probably not. But usually if someone is like alpha striking us, like maybe that Voya player is attacking with a million elves and they're a huge wolf, then we Aetherize them, and we don't even have to target that player. Aetherize says all attacking creatures. So they'll all go back to their owner's hand. If they were tokens, they're gone forever. We don't have to worry about them coming at it, or at least harming us that turn. And that's pretty sweet. Yeah. It does only affect one player's board and only the attacking creatures. But if you've ever been the victim of a Settle the Wreckage, this is not quite as backbreaking as that, but it still feels similar in that moment. So yeah. Goodness, it's not nearly as backbreaking as Settle the Wreckage, because your creatures are all exiled. These are just bounced. But still, it does feel a little like that in the moment, because you've thought you made a big attack, and now not only did you not make that attack, essentially, but your shields are down because you have to recast your commander, your creatures. Then we have Desynchronization, another Assassin's Creed card. 2 and double blue for an instant, another instant speed one, that returns each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand. Historic cards are legends, sagas, and artifacts. So we have so many artifacts in this deck, particularly our tokens. Not all of our tokens are artifacts, but many of our tokens are, including many of our robot and thopter and drone artifact creatures. And our commander is legendary, so that's that. We have a bunch of other legendary creatures in the deck as well. Not a huge number, but enough. And so this can really cut the number of creatures in play down to half or lower than that. And it really helps a deck that either focuses on legends or focuses on artifacts. Or I guess sagas. We don't have any sagas in our deck, but there you go. And those are our Wraths, and that's our support sections of the deck. Let's talk now about our supplemental sections, starting with our payoffs. These are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway, and we've seen all but 2 of these. The Steel Seeker cares about artifacts entering the battlefield. Stridehanger Automaton cares about us making artifact tokens. The Research Craft cares about us casting artifact spells. April cares about us casting artifacts, enchantments, and sorceries, and cares about our opponents doing so as well. It's crazy. And Mechan Assembler cares about us for the first time each turn having an artifact we control enter. Next we have Iron Man Armored Avenger. This is 3 and a blue for a 2/2 legendary artifact creature, human hero. Artifact creature because he's the creature and the suit is the artifact. That's just how they've been doing it in this set. This is a 2/2 flyer for 4 that says whenever we draw a card, we put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So in this deck, if Iron Man is the first artifact we've had enter with our commander in play, Iron Man is going to enter, our commander will draw a card, our commander will get bigger, and Iron Man will put a counter on something, which could be himself, but could be our commander. So now our commander is a 7/7 to start off with, trampling Dinosaur. That seems pretty good. And that's every time we draw a card, not our second card each turn. So every time we draw a card from our draw step, whenever we crack a clue, there's a lot of draw in this deck, and Iron Man can go absolutely bonkers with it. And whenever Iron Man attacks, other attacking modified creatures gain flying until end of turn. Modified creatures are creatures that have an aura on them that we control, an equipment attached to them, or any counters. So Iron Man modifies creatures, and even if we didn't put the counters on our commander, if our commander had, just the Vibranium Strike Gauntlets on it, any of our equipment, it's also modified. So as long as we've got Iron Man attacking, which is a good reason for us to put counters on Iron Man, to make him not likely to die from a smallish flying or reach blocker, then if Iron Man is attacking, our commander is probably going to have flying as well, because they're probably both going to be modified, or commander's probably going to be modified. So yeah, good evasion there. But not quite as good as Kappa Cannoneer. Kappa Cannoneer, it's got its own evasion, but this is a 4/4 artifact creature Turtle Warrior, so another artifact still triggers our commander for 5 and a blue. It has Improvise, meaning we can tap artifacts that we control to pay for the generic mana costs of this spell, which means little less likely than Affinity, but not that unlikely for Kappa Cannoneer to cost a single blue, or just slightly more than it. Because remember, if we tap a clue, we can still activate that clue, because it doesn't require us to tap. If we tap a food, we can't activate the food to crack it, but if we weren't planning to anyway, it doesn't matter. Same is true for treasures, or any of our artifact creatures, like our Sad Robot, or our drone tokens, or our equipment, which work just as well tapped as not tapped. And when the Kappa Cannoneer enters, it's a Ward 4, 4/4 creature that when it enters, and when any other artifacts enter, it gets a counter and it can't be blocked this turn. An unblockable threat that protects itself and gets bigger every time we have artifacts enter, especially with our tokens being generated all the time, all these trinkets. This can become a huge threat and do a lot of damage for us. Love it. So that is our payoff section. Next up, we have a synergy section. These are all cards that care about the things that we're doing, and sort of count the things that we're doing in a way. So for example, Nettlecyst gives the equipped creature +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment we control. Uthros Research Craft, once it becomes a spacecraft or a creature, gets +1/+1 for every artifact we control. If we have 4 or more artifacts, the Shimmer Dragon is hexproof. The Junkwinder has affinity for tokens, and Thought Monitor has affinity for artifacts, so both of them count our tokens or our artifacts, both of which we're going to have a lot of, and become cheaper. And the card we haven't seen is Tooth of Chiscoria. This is 3 generic mana for an artifact with Flash, another way to trigger our commander on an opponent's turn, and affinity for artifacts. But it doesn't have a colored mana component, meaning if we have 3 artifacts in play, we can cast this for 0 mana at flash speed. On our turn, on our opponent's turn, whenever we need this. And when it enters, it's not an equipment, but it works like one. We can tap it and target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. A tiny, tiny little bit of power boost, but after triggering our commander, drawing a card, preferably on an opponent's turn, giving a little bit of extra power, that sounds pretty good to me. I didn't include the Scale, which is exactly the same card, other than it taps to add +0/+1 in this deck, but you could put it in as well if you want it to be sort of a nice mirror. I just thought this was a cool inclusion. So that is our synergy section. Next up, we have our uses section to go along with our synergy. These are all cards that allow us to use our artifacts in ways that you wouldn't expect. For example, we have Improvise, which is not the same as Affinity. Affinity is in the synergy section. We can use our artifacts to help pay for the Kappa Cannoneer. Lodestone Needle lets us craft with an artifact to turn the needle into a compass. Shimmer Dragon lets us tap our artifacts in order to draw cards. And we have Ironheart in here. Clever Champion. I love this card. Incredible art. I love how happy she is. 4 and a blue for a 3/4 legendary artifact creature, human hero. She's an artifact again because she's got a suit. She also has Improvise, so another reason for us to use our artifacts to be able to play her. And she's a 3/4 flyer that gives all of our non-creature spells Improvise. We have 25 creature spells in this deck, and she's one of them. So that means every other spell beyond our creatures, we can tap our artifacts to help cast them, at least for the generic mana costs. This can really accelerate us in a huge way, and the idea of having a deck that accelerates us a lot with an effect like Improvise or Water Bending or Convoke usually requires you to have a lot of card draw, and our deck has an enormous amount of card draw, especially from the fact that our commander draws us cards, and we're built around triggering our commander to draw us cards. So Ironheart can really keep things rolling for us. And that is our uses section. We next want to go to our pump section. We got a lot of these because we want our commander to get bigger, as well as our other creatures. Next we have, first I guess, we've got Falcon's Wing Harness. This is 2 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 2 and a blue. I'm sorry, it's 1 and a blue, goodness, for an equipment that equips for 2 and a blue. But when it enters, we attach it to a creature we control. It snaps onto our commander, probably. And it gives that creature +1/+1, flying, and ward 1. Just a solid way for us to have a little protection, have great evasion, and a little bit of pump. And if we have to reattach this, it's only 3 mana to do so. We next have the Ilvoy Lightjammer. This is 1 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 3, but has flash. So another way for us to protect our commander and pump our commander up, and trigger our commander, most of all, on opponent's turns. When it enters, we attach it to a creature we control, and that creature gains hexproof until end of turn, great protection, and it gives +1/+2, making our commander, if we cast this on our turn, into 7/8 hexproof trampler. That seems pretty good. We've seen Joriel. We can pump up all our creatures, assuming it doesn't depower them, to give everything a power and toughness of equal to the number of cards in our hand. Lodestone Needle, on its backside as Guy's Stone Compass, can have us explore, which can put counters on our creatures. Mutagen Man makes mutagen tokens, which put counters on our creatures. And next we have Sting Bilbo's Sword. This is 2 generic mana for a legendary artifact equipment from the absolutely brand new Hobbit set, which comes out. You're going to see Hobbit decks from me next week. This is a 2 mana flash artifact. So another one of these. It equips for 3, and when it enters, we put a hone counter on Sting for each creature target opponent controls. We attach Sting to up to 1 target creature we control automatically. So it's another 2 mana equipment we can flash in and snap onto our commander, and hone counters give +1/+0 to the equipped creature. So we can't get extras of that. We don't have any like proliferate in this deck. But the idea of having this be a way to trigger our commander on an opponent's turn or in the middle of combat, with our commander having trample, if our commander's attacking, we look at the opponent and we say, oh, one of you has 2 creatures, one of you has 4, and one of you has 9. We're going to put 9 hone counters on Bilbo's Sword, and now it's an equipment that equips for 3, but automatically snaps on to whatever we've had it snap onto when it entered, and it gives +9/+0 every time it's equipped to something, or whenever it's equipped to something, as long as it is. This just seemed like a really fun inclusion from a new set, so I wanted to include it. So there you go. Next we have Super Suit. This is 1 and a blue for an equipment that equips for 2, and it flashes in, and when it does, we attach it to a creature we control, but it also untaps that creature, and it gives +1/+2. So just like the Ilvoy Lightjammer, it gives +1/+2, it flashes in, it costs 2 mana, and it auto-equips when it enters. But rather than giving hexproof until end of turn, the Super Suit untaps that creature. So yeah, both of these are pretty useful to us, and I like this. I like being able to flash this in on our opponent's turn, draw a card from it, and then suddenly our commander can block, at least as a 3/4, And if we've drawn another card as well, if we've drawn our second card that turn, then we're blocking as a 7/8 at least. Cool. We've seen the Ooze. The Ooze makes mutagens. Mutagens can pump up our creatures with counters. Next we have Champion's Helm. 3 generic mana for an equipment that gives +2/+2, equips for 1, and as long as the equipped creature is legendary, it has hexproof. So this is sort of the upgraded Swiftfoot boots. It doesn't give haste, but it does give +2/+2, and the hexproof is only for legends, but that's pretty okay. This equips for the same cost as the boots, costs 1 more, gives more value. Yeah, I think it's a solid card for a deck like this. We've seen Nettlecyst. Whatever it's attached to gets +1/+1 for every artifact and or enchantment we control. Stridehanger Automaton only pumps up our Thopters, but it does pump those up. Tooth of Chiscoria pumps up 1 creature every turn cycle that we want to tap this to pump up. Then we have Unstable Molecule Suit. 3 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 4 or equips a commander for 2 generic, but it doesn't snap on. And it gives the equipped creature +2/+2 and indestructible. So we have some things that protect our commander by giving it hexproof. Indestructible is another great way to protect our commander and make it into, when it's attacking as a dinosaur, an 8/8 indestructible trampler. Seems pretty solid. Next up is April O'Neil. She makes mutagens, which give us counters. Iron Man gives us a counter on one of our creatures every time we draw a card. The Vibranium Strike Gauntlets give +3/+3, as well as Trample and Curiosity. Emissary Green can put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control for every security vote we get when he attacks. And last in the section, we have the Displaced Dinosaurs, which are good in our deck, but also feel just like, it's a dinosaur from another time. This is Devil Dinosaur. Or at least it's Devil Dinosaur's people? I don't know. Anyway, this is 5 and double green for a 7/7 dinosaur. Already pretty great. But it says, as a historic permanent you control enters, it becomes a 7/7 dinosaur creature in addition to its other types. So this means every time we have a clue enter, or a food, or a treasure, it's a 7/7 dinosaur in addition to being a clue or a food or a treasure. If we get one of those drones that is a 1/1 flying artifact creature that can't block anything that doesn't fly, it's a 7/7 flying artifact creature that can't block anything that can't fly. Because remember, every artifact is historic. And so is every legendary. So that means if we have a legendary land enter, if we have a legendary artifact enter that's not a creature, it's now a creature. If our commander enters, our commander becomes a 7/7 dinosaur in addition to its other types. Which means whenever our commander sees us draw our second card, it's going to become a 6/6 dinosaur with trample. It will depower itself a little bit, but gain trample. Because whichever power and toughness setting ability has resolved last, that's the one that wins. That's the best way to look at it. So yeah, this is a great way for us to absolutely change the way the deck plays, because every time we make an artifact token, or we play an artifact or a legend, we're going to get a sudden 7/7, and that's just a lot more fun in my mind, and flavorful, of course, with these dinosaurs, than playing something like, Cyberdrive Awakener and swinging in with a bunch of flying 4/4s. That still wins games, but so does this. So yeah, seems fun. That covers our pump section. Let's take a look at our evasion now. We've seen all of these. Falcon's Wing Harness can give flying. Iron Man can also give flying to any modified creature attacking when we attack with it. And Senator Peacock can make a creature unblockable whenever we sacrifice a clue. Yeah, pretty cool. Those are our evasion cards. We have some protection as well, actually quite a bit. These are things that are here to protect us or our creatures. Collective Resistance can give a creature hexproof and indestructible. Disculpting Blast can protect us by bouncing a attacking creature, because that's the way we want to use it. Falcon's Wing Harness can give Ward 1. Hunter's Bow gives Ward 2. Illvoid Lightjammer gives hexproof until end of turn. Manhole Cover gives indestructible until end of turn. Swiftfoot Boots is something we haven't seen yet. This is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives hexproof and haste. So perfect for our commander with that hexproof. Haste can be relevant in this deck as well, and we can move it around pretty cheaply, but hexproof is pretty good. And remember, it's an equipment, so we don't just trigger our commander when this comes in, if it's the first artifact we've had come in during that turn, but it also is something we can tap for any of our uses, like Improvise or our Shimmer Dragon. Champion's Helm, like I mentioned, is sort of the Big Daddy version of Swiftfoot Boots. Gives hexproof as well for our legendary equipped creature. Unstable Molecule Suit gives that equipped creature indestructible, and Aetherize lets us bounce all of the creatures that are attacking, which doesn't have to be ones that are attacking us. We can use it on an opponent's turn to protect that opponent if we want, for a political reason. Maybe we make a deal with them. But either way, this can protect us. So those are our protection cards. Next, we are going to look at our Recursion. These are cards that we can either get back from the graveyard, like Secrets of the Key with Flashback, or give us a way to get other cards back, like True Ancestry, regrowing a permanent card from our graveyard. Nothing much to say here, we've already seen these, but it's just nice to be able to have access to a few other things beyond what we thought we would. And finally, we have this animation section, which is just displaced dinosaurs. In the considering section I mentioned at the start of the video, we have a whole lot of other cards that we can go to that I ended up not including in the deck in its final form. But if you're interested in checking those out, there's plenty of them. Like I mentioned, Cyberdrive Awakener, that's another animation card. Animation in the sense that it can make our things that aren't creatures into creatures. So there's several of those. So if you want to check that out, it's a great place to go, in addition to all the other things we can check out. And that covers every spell in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our artifact lands. We've got 3 lands here that are lands that are also the artifact type, which means if they enter, they're going to trigger our commander's second ability. We're going to draw a card if it's the first artifact that turn, which will again trigger our commander's first ability. So we've got Seed of the Synod and Tree of Tales. This is the blue one and the green one. They come in untapped and they make those colors of mana. Nice. We also have Tangle Pool Bridge, which is a tap land that makes either of our colors and is indestructible. So yeah, pretty good as ways to up our artifact count in our deck. So that seems good. We're also running 16 basics. We're a little bit more blue than we are green, so this is our balance here. Of course, we got the Marvel Arts, and Spider-Man's here for some reason, so yeah, just in case. Next, we have this bicycle land. It's Rain-Slicked Copse. It's a forest and an island, so it inherently taps for green or blue, and it enters tapped. Which is relevant because we might want to care about the number of basic types that we have, which you'll see a reason for in a moment. It also has cycling for 2, meaning if it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. Something we might do if we're just desperate for card draw early on in the game. If we get to the late game and we just don't need any more lands, we can trade this in for a card, or we can cycle this on an opponent's turn as our second. Like if we've flashed in an artifact or we've cast a spell that's made an artifact token on an opponent's turn, that will be the first card we draw that turn from our commander. Then we cycle Rain-Slicked Copse and we draw our second card, and now our commander is a 6/6. Or we can do this on our own turn, of course, if we haven't had another way to draw a second card that turn, and we can make our commander a 6/6 that way too. This is really useful in most decks, but particularly in ours. However, if you wanted to upgrade this, I would suggest Breeding Pool, the shock land version of this. It is also a dual-typed land. You don't have the access to cycling, but you can come in untapped and it still has those types, and that's pretty good. Just more expensive. Next is Hinterland Harbor. This is a check land. It's a land that taps for green or blue, and it enters tapped unless we control a forest or an island, which does not say basic, meaning we have 16 basic lands that can make this come in untapped. But we also have Rain-Slicked Copse, which is a forest and an island, so if this is the only land we have in play, Hinterland Harbor will still come in untapped. I like to run check lands in my deck because they're pretty inexpensive and they're reliably untapped lands. Generally, my cutoff is if I have 18 lands in the deck that will make this come in untapped, I think it's worth running it at that point. And in this deck we do. We've got 16 basics, a bicycle land, and a tango land you'll see in a moment, which also has those basic types. So yeah. Next, we've got Restless Vinestalk. This is a creature land. It's a land that comes in tapped, and it taps for both of our colors. We can also pay 3 a green and a blue, and until end of turn, it becomes a 5/5 green and blue plant creature with trample that's still a land. I love this Sam Burley art. And when it attacks, up to one other target creature has base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. So we're playing with base power and toughness in a couple of ways in this deck. Doing it once in our land base is pretty good. We can use this to pump up one of our small creatures, like that drone I keep mentioning, the 1/1 flying artifact creature that can't block anything that doesn't fly. So we can use this to make it a 3/3 attacker, since we're only getting it when the Vinestalk itself attacks, and we're pushing a little extra damage in the air. But usually, What we want to use this for is to turn an opponent's creature into base power and toughness 3/3, so that it's harder for them to block with it without losing that creature, both for them blocking the Vine Stalk, but also blocking our 6/6 trampling commander, if our commander is that at the time, which it almost always is. So Restless Vine Stalk kind of takes a threatening creature and makes it into a less threatening creature for us to have to deal with, which usually means an opponent, unless that creature was, something they didn't care about anyway, which if it was already like a 1/1 servo, then we're not going to turn it into a 3/3. Unless they were already planning to like chump block with that creature, they're probably not going to anymore. If it was, their commander or a more powerful creature or something that has other value to them, us making it smaller and therefore making it likely to die means they're less likely to block with it, which makes this a little bit of an evasion effect, since it's helping us go unblocked, at least by that creature. So it doesn't come up every time, but it's nice to have a creature land, especially one that can turn into a 5/5 with trample. And yeah, creature lands are just fun, so might as well include it. Next, we've got our 2 filter lands. Overflowing Basin is a land with exactly the same text as our Simic Signet. Pay 1, tap it, make a blue and a green. Great. Filters our land. Beautiful art from Thunder Junction originally, I think. So yeah, really nice. We've also got Flooded Grove. This is a land that can tap for colorless, or if we pay a green or a blue into it, we can tap it for double green, double blue, or one of each. So this is a great filter land, and it also taps without us having to pay mana into it to get that colorless mana. But note well, this can't make colored mana unless we have colored mana to put into it. So if we had like a Soul Ring available to us and no other like colored mana sources, we can't tap this for green or blue because it needs green or blue to activate in order to make that colored mana. As opposed to Overflowing Basin, which can have any kind of mana put into it, and it will make colored mana. So both of these have a place in our deck, so we might as well run both. Yeah. We've got 4 fixing lands. We're running Command Tower because it is the same text as Arcane Signet. It taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, and it comes in untapped, so it makes blue or green for us as an untapped dual land. Great. We would run this if it was a tap land. And we are, because it's Path of Ancestry. This is a tap land that has the same text as Command Tower, but it also says when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So I'm sure you can guess, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur have types that they share with themselves. They are a human dinosaur hero, so yeah, if we use Path of Ancestry's mana to cast them, we'll get a scry. We also have 11 other humans, 2 of which are heroes, and Displaced Dinosaurs is a dinosaur. So that's 12 other cards in our deck that can give us a scry when we cast them with Path of Ancestry's mana. Great. We're running Blighted Woodland as well. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and a green, tap and sack it, to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So that effect, for 3 and a green, is just Explosive Vegetation, which is a solid card that you can run anyway. Having it in your land base, on a land that already taps for mana and comes in untapped, is pretty great. Even though we have to lose this land and pay that amount in order to find them, it is us putting 2 lands into play for the cost of just 1 land drop. So it's acceleration in our land base. Pretty good. Also, we have Temple of the False God. It's not everyone's favorite land, but it's an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It's a soul land. We just can't activate it at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more including itself. So what that means is Temple of the False God doesn't accelerate us early game. In fact, if we have like an Overflowing Basin and a Temple of the False God, and those are our only mana sources in our opening hand, we probably want to mulligan that. But Temple of the False God, if it's our 5th land drop, does jump us from making 4 mana to making 6. It accelerates us every part of the game except the early game. Mid-game, late game, whatever we need, Temple of the False God's there to help us with it. And like I say, some people think that this is a waste of putting in your deck. I think it's absolutely fine and powerful for decks that want this kind of thing. And in our deck, we don't have a huge number of very expensive spells, but we've got a lot of mana sinks in the form of our trinket tokens. So being able to tap Temple of the False God the same way you would tap Soul Ring to just crack a clue, it's almost like Temple of the False God in that moment taps to draw cards. So yeah, I think this is an appropriate power level for the power level of this deck, and in it, it's a good card. Next, we've got Yavimaya Coast. This is a pain land. It is exactly the same as our Talisman of Curiosity. Taps for colorless, taps for green or blue if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Everything I said about the Talisman is just as true here, and it's in our land base, so it comes in untapped. We don't even have to pay mana to get it in. Great. Also, Jesper Aisling art, whose name I can never pronounce right, but I love his art, so gotta love this from Dominaria. Next, we've got Temple of Mystery. This is a tap land that makes both of our colors and scries one when it comes in. Very simple, perennially reprinted, always very cheap, and usually worth running in your deck. You can upgrade this to Hedge Maze, the Surveil land, if you want to. It's a lot more expensive since it's being played in, I was going to say standard, but really every format they're legal in. The Surveil lands are getting played in there. But if you've got one, or you're willing to spend the money on a more powerful land, it's a solid inclusion. We've also got Dreamroot Cascade, which is a slow land, because at time of recording, Secrets of Strixhaven made these lands cheaper. We haven't seen them since Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, and Crimson Vow, so the enemy colored lands are cheap again, so putting it in our deck. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more other lands of any type, and it taps for green or blue. So great, helps us out. We also have Sodden Verdure. This is the Tango land I mentioned. It is a forest and island as well, so it helps with our check land, and it so therefore makes green or blue, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So we do have to have basic lands in play for the Verdure in order to come in untapped, as opposed to the Dreamroot Cascade coming in untapped if we have any 2 lands other than itself. So a little worse in terms of its likelihood of coming in untapped, but it also has its dual types, and those are useful for us in other ways. So yeah, we want to run both if we can. If you were to want to upgrade this, again, that shock land is probably a good idea. Last, we have 6 utility lands in this deck. We're running Alchemist Refuge because it is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay a green, a blue, and tap it, and all of our spells have flash this turn, or it can be cast as though they have flash. This is very strong for us because it means we can play spells that, it means we can play spells on our opponent's turns or during combat on our turn or whenever else, but particularly because we want to be able to flash in our artifacts or cast spells that make trinkets or other artifact tokens during opponent's turns. Since every turn we have something enter as an artifact, the first time with our commander in play, who draws us a card. So this is 3 mana, a green, a blue, and the opportunity cost of tapping the Alchemist Refuge, to give the next spells we cast flash. So it's not likely to be more than 1 or maybe 2 extra spells. But still, if we do that, we're getting to flash in something that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to on an opponent's turn, and thereby draw ourselves a card. So it's like we're saying, get a thing we have in our hand into play at a time we normally wouldn't be able to, plus for that 3 mana, we get a card off of it. Great. Next, we've got Archway of Innovation. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control an island. It taps for blue, and we can pay a blue and tap it, and the next spell we cast this turn has Improvise. So similar to what Ironheart gives all of our non-artifact spells. We can use all of our artifacts, like our tokens or our equipment, to help us cast whatever next spell we're casting, whether it is itself an artifact or a creature or anything else. Sweet. Next, we've got Demolition Field. Demolition Field is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. Now, I know you're thinking, I don't want to blow up people's lands, and I don't want people blowing my lands up. The kind of decks that I build are of a power level that pods that want this kind of power level of a deck usually aren't looking to get their lands blown up or to do the same themselves. And that's fair. Not everyone wants that in their commander game. But sometimes you have to deal with a problematic non-basic. Like, someone might be running a Rogue's Passage, which makes it so their huge commander can't be blocked. And so you gotta deal with that. Or they're stopping you from winning with your game plan because they have like a Maze of Ith and they're turning off your big commander attacking. Any land that can do those things is something you should deal with because that is a threat to your game plan, or it empowers theirs to make their game plan a threat to you. And threats have answers in Magic. So Demolition Field, if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, destroys a non-basic land, but then that opponent, that non-basic land's controller, gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. We replace our demo field with a basic. They replace their non-basic that we destroyed with a basic, assuming, of course, we both have basics in our libraries. And even at pods where people don't want to see lands get blown up and don't want to see their mana denied, this mana isn't getting denied unless the land that got blown up was making a whole lot of mana, which is not what we're running it for. So we're not using this to blow up bounce lands or lands that were enchanted with a wild growth or something like that. But like a Gaia's Cradle, yeah, we might do that. So yeah, Demolition Field is a reasonable inclusion even at tables who don't want to see lands get blown up because it replaces itself, and it's also just 1 out of 100 cards. Next, we've got our Kitchen. This is also from the Ravnica Clue Edition set. It's a tap land that makes green or blue, and we can pay for and tap it to investigate. So we just get to make a clue whenever we need to. This is neat. It's just in our land base, we can always make ourselves a trinket, which gives us access to maybe drawing a card either that turn or later, but at the very least, triggers our commander if nothing else is going to that turn. Great. Next, we've got a Rogue's Passage, which I mentioned a moment ago. Untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay for and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. Usually we're using this on Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur, because we want to swing in and win with commander damage, if that's what's going to win it for us. We can also use it on our other creatures, if we just want to try and protect them from being blocked, if we want to win with just regular damage totals, or we can use this on opponents' creatures, either because we've made a deal with an opponent, and had them attack, and then we respond to the attack by making their creature unblockable as they attack someone else other than us, in exchange for them, leaving us alone for a turn cycle or two, or something along those lines. Or we can do it without any kind of politicking, and just have opponent A attack opponent B, then we activate the Rogue's Passage after attacks are declared, because we know that opponent A's attack benefits us as well, because opponent B is also our opponent. And that's also a fun, splashy moment where, a lot of the times people, if two players are one's attacking the other two players at the table don't usually participate in that combat. So doing so makes it a memorable moment, and that's just fun. And a powerful card for us too. Finally, we have the Shire, which is a legendary land. I mentioned those a little earlier in reference to the Displaced Dinosaurs. If the Shire enters with Displaced Dinosaurs in play, I believe it comes in as a 7/7 legendary land since it is historic. Yeah, pretty neat. Oh, but maybe you want to know what it does? Well, here we go. It is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a legendary creature, so it'll come in untapped if our commander's in play, and it taps for green. And then for 1 and a green, we can tap it and tap an untapped creature we control, which could be a token that we weren't going to use for anything else. We could tap it, just any of our creatures that we don't plan to attack with or that we don't need to block with. And what we do is we make a food token. So it just produces more trinkets for us in our land base. But it does require us to tap down a creature in the process, but that's not so bad. If we're just looking for more tokens, more trinkets, especially on opponents' turns to trigger our commander and draw more cards, this is a solid way to do it. And that sums it up. Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. This has been all my Marvel decks. And starting next week, I'll be releasing new Hobbit commander decks every Thursday until the start of October when Reality Fracture drops. So let me know in the comments how you liked this Marvel stuff, and check out those comments as well for my playlist of all the Marvel decks I built. Great. Like I said, thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider becoming a member of this channel on YouTube, or joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic. And remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.